began as level-voiced as he could, in the sort of tone he saved for disagreeable duties. "It's business, Mr. McIntyre," he said. "It's inside the law. Perhaps we couldn't have bought out 2 or 3 of you at any price, but most of you did have a price. Progress demands some things." Never had he felt so inadequate, and it was with the greatest relief that he heard hoofbeats a few hundred yards away. But at his words the grief in McIntyre's eyes had changed to fury. "You and your dirty gang of crooks!" he cried. "Not one of you has got an honest love for anything on God's earth. You're a herd of money swine." Samuel rose, and McIntyre took a step towards him. "You long-winded dude! You got our land. Take that for Peter Carhart." He swung from the shoulder, quick as lightning, and down went Samuel in a heap. Dimly he heard steps in the doorway, and knew that someone was holding McIntyre, but there was no need. The rancher had sunk down in his chair and dropped his head in his hands. Samuel's brain was whirring. He realized that the fourth fist had hit him, and a great flood of emotion cried out that the law that had inexorably ruled his life was in motion again. In a half daze he got up and strode from the room. The next 10 minutes were perhaps the hardest of his life. People talk of the courage of convictions, but in actual life a man's duty to his family may make a rigid corpse seem a selfish indulgence of his own righteousness. Samuel thought mostly of his family, yet he never really wavered. That jolt had brought him to. When he came back into the room there were a lot of worried faces waiting for him, but he didn't waste any time explaining. "Gentlemen," he said, "Mr. McIntyre has been kind enough to convince me that in this matter you are absolutely right and the Peter Carhart interests absolutely wrong. As far as I'm concerned, you can keep your ranches to the rest of your days." He pushed his way through an astounded gathering, and within a half hour he had sent 2 telegrams that staggered the operator into complete unfitness for business. One was to Hamil in San Antonio. One was to Peter Carhart in New York. Samuel didn't sleep much that night. He knew that for the first time in his business career he had made a dismal, miserable failure. But some instinct in him, stronger than will, deeper than training, had forced him to do what would probably end his ambitions and his happiness. But it was done, and it never occurred to him that it could have acted otherwise. The next morning 2 telegrams were waiting for him. The first was from Hamil. It contained 3 words: "You blamed idiot." The second was from New York: "Deal off. Come to New York immediately. Carhart." Within a week things had happened. Hamil quarreled furiously and violently defended his scheme. He was summoned to New York and spent a bad half hour on the carpet in Peter Carhart's office. He broke with the Carhart interests in July, and in August Samuel Meredith, at 35 years old, was to all intents made Carhart's partner. The fourth fist had done its work. I suppose there's a caddish streak in every man that runs crosswise across his character and disposition and general outlook. With some men it's secret, and we never know it's there until they strike us in the dark one night. But Samuel's showed when it was in action, and the sight of it made people see red. He was rather lucky in that, because every time his little devil came up it met a reception that sent it scurrying down below in a sickly, feeble condition. It was the same devil, the same streak, that made him order Gilly's friends off the bed, that made him go inside Marjorie's house. If you could run your hand along Samuel Meredith's jaw, you'd feel a lump. He admits he's never been sure which fist left it there, but he wouldn't lose it for anything. He says there's no cad like an old cad, and that sometimes, just before making a decision, it's a great help to stroke his chin. The reporters call it a nervous characteristic, but it's not that. It's so he can feel again the gorgeous clarity, the lightning sanity of those 4 fists. End of The 4 Fists by F. Scott Fitzgerald.